Hello everyone, this is Speaker Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about the Flashpoint movie and take a look at some on-set photos of the project that have recently surfaced. Now I'm pretty sure anybody watching this video knows now what the Flashpoint movie is about. Just in case there's anybody who doesn't know what the Flashpoint movie is, this is of course the first big screen cinematic movie of the DC superhero The Flash. It takes inspiration from the famous Flashpoint comic book storyline where Barry Allen goes back in time to prevent his mother's murder. As a result of his actions, this creates an alternate reality where we see different versions of the classic DC heroes. Now the movie itself is set for release in November the 4th 2022, with Ezra Miller reprising his role as the Flash as what we saw in the beginning from Batman vs Superman and Justice League as well. And we will also see of course Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck returning as their Batman roles, and also Sasha Calle will be introduced as Supergirl. Now I've already given my thoughts and opinions on the announcement of the movie and the various castings, and you can check out my thoughts on those on the channel, and I will leave the links for all of those videos within the description. Flashpoint of course is the beginning plans from Warner Brothers and DC to initiate the multiverse era following the failure of the DCU or the Snyderverse. Now when we look at these photos and just give an honest opinion, and yes, I will of course consider the fact that this is indeed a multiverse, so what we are looking at here is an Elseworld take, an alternate take. It's not the iconic versions that we've become accustomed to throughout all of fandom of these characters. So I'm going to bear that in mind when I took a look at and give my overall thoughts on these overall photos. We also have to bear in mind that when we see these costumes and looks on set, they will always look better when we see the final film, because of course they'll be filmed in certain angles with certain filters, and it always looks better when you see them in the finished product than what you see them on set. So we're going to take a look at these photos now, and the first one we have here is of Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne standing here, and you can clearly see of course that he's been given the wig. He's got the full-on hairstyle with the grey colour of course, because it's the Asian version, and I like this look here. It looks very similar from what we saw him in his version from the Tim Burton films. Very much follows on from that continuity in terms of his own particular look. I think Michael Keaton's presence is what's really got fans mostly excited about this film. They did post a couple of days ago a shot of the what seemingly looked like the Batman Returns costume with seemingly a bit of blood on the yellow emblem over there, so we can assume that Michael Keaton will be in the actual Batman costume at some point, because I thought initially when they announced his participation, I felt it was only going to be as Bruce Wayne only, because he is old now. He is well into his 60s, so I couldn't see how they were going to put him into the costume. Again, will we see some sort of de-aging trickery when they put Michael Keaton in the costume? I assume it could be very possible that they will do that. If he is in a costume, I probably will feel it'll only be in some smaller scenes overall. I don't think it's going to be a constant look where we see Michael Keaton in many scenes with the costume on. But in terms of this look over it, you can't really argue. He still looks good, still looks sharp. You know, still looks a convincingly aged Bruce Wayne. So looking at this picture, yeah, this is a convincing look overall in Bruce Wayne. There was another shot reveal where we see, presumably in his nice flash car. Again, it's nothing really too much we can talk about this overall. We always assume Bruce Wayne is always going to have the most flashiest cars driving around in him. So nothing too in-depth that we can talk about in terms of him driving around his car. Now we're going to get to the very contentious point, and I've seen a lot of online reaction to this look, and I'm sure this will be the big talking point amongst this reveal, and that is of course the reveal of Supergirl. Now we've got two photos here. We're going to take the first look here where we see her attached on by some harnesses, and this will be of course a sequence where she's floating down, I guess, from the air. Now when we look at these on-set photos, they normally do them without the cape, because as we all know, the cape is normally CGI'd in. That's always been the case when we look at the Henry Cavill Superman. It just makes it a lot easier for the actors if they don't have the cape attached to them. Gives them a bit more mobility and a bit more maneuverability. So that's where we see her without the cape on here. Now I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, this is not a flattering look. I mean, I know that this is a multiverse, as I mentioned before, and yes, we announced at the time when Sasha Calle was introduced as Supergirl that this was a Latina version. She is, I believe, of Colombian descent. And if you do a bit of research, or you are very much of a comic book fan, you will know that this is the version that they will be basing on the Lana Kent Supergirl from the comic books. In my previous video, when I remarked on Sasha Calle being announced as Supergirl, I remarked on the fact that even though she was of Latina descent, it didn't really matter because she still had the similar frame of Supergirl, and that all they really needed to do was to dye her hair blonde and she would look convincingly like Supergirl. Because even though this was a multiverse, I still thought they were going to go for the more classical blonde hair version of the character, but that's not the case. They are going for the Lana Kent version of Supergirl, and in that interpretation she has shorter hair, and she has the look of this costume here where we see the upper body is covered in red along with the S emblem as well. So that's the inspiration they're taking it from. Now, to be honest, I don't really like that look either. Call me old-fashioned, but I do prefer the more iconic established look of these characters. So regardless of whether this is a live action or interpretation of the character, I'm not really impressed with the comic book look of this version anyway. But when we look at the photos here, yeah, it just doesn't look right in terms of the upper body we see with that kind of tainted red version. They've gone with mostly the same S-shaped emblem that what we saw from Henry Cavill's Superman. There is a slight more upward curve if you look at the lower part of the S, but again, that's nothing too distinctive on here. They've very much gone for a similar look. So if you look at the texture of the costume, it's got that same kind of thick texture, almost armor-like material that we saw from the Man of Steel version of Henry Cavill. But of course, what is most strikingly apparent from this is the lower body and the abdominal version, and they've given her lower abs, it looks like, from here. I don't know why they've chosen to do that. You know, we can understand when we get the male counterparts of these heroic costumes, when we look at particular Superman, and most recently we had Shazam, of course, and Thor as well from the Avengers. We all know these costumes are always going to be padded, and they're going to have very much details in terms of the shoulders and the arms and the abs as well. Fair enough, for a masculine form, that's perfectly appropriate, but I don't understand why they've given this more abdominal look, or they've emphasized on the abs for Supergirl. It looks really off, and I hate to say it, it's not really doing any favors to Sasha Calle as an actress either. It just gives that more of a bloated look. You know, you want a female superhero to have that more of that curved, more of that streamlined, toned, athletic look about her, but it just looks off for me. It's really off-putting. I really don't know why they decided to put it on. If we look at the side of her hips, it looks like she's got a belt, and I think that's just to help the harnesses, lifting her up and down. You can see the harness, or the ropes rather, attached to her, so that's why I think she's wearing that inner belt, it looks like. So obviously when we see the finished product, she's not going to be wearing that belt, or she's not going to have that belt apparently sticking out from her when we see the final costume. But yeah, it just looks off. And then we have another look which for me looks even worse, and again, I'll go back to that female form. This looks nothing like a female form. You know, it looks very flat, it looks very one-dimensional. There's very lacking in terms of curves, in terms of that female tone that I mentioned before. Again, we look at clearly the abs. I just don't know why they had to put that in there. It's just very off-putting. Again, I don't think it's very fair to the actress herself. It will look a lot better when they do the finished product and they add in all the CGI and they add in all the cape and the filters, etc. But on this look alone, it's not a flattering look at all. And I just don't know what they were thinking in terms of this overall design. Now, if the abs weren't there, I mean, it even looks like there's a bit of padding in her legs again. Again, I think that's just to help with the harness support perhaps. But it's just not a flattering look. And a lot of people are trying to excuse the fact that because this is a multiverse, well, it can look how it wants to, but I'm not judging it on that. I'm just judging it on the first look. And fine, it's a multiverse, and that's going to be the go-to excuse as we go into this latest initiative and we see all of these alternative versions of the character. Anytime somebody criticizes it or compares it to the original versions, the counter argument is just going to be, well, this is the multiverse, so it doesn't matter. So I always knew that going into this Flashpoint movie, so I'm not as outraged as maybe more hardcore comic book fans or purists will be about this look. I'm just judging it on its own merit, and for me it's not a flattering look. It's not a great look either, with the short hair as well. Again, it's as unfeminine as what you could describe it as. So that's it really in terms of the overall look. I can't really say much more about it. As I mentioned before, I'm sure we'll get more photos in the next upcoming months. They are filming in England, I believe now. They've been filming for a couple of weeks now within this movie. So I guess the next reveal will be when we see Ezra Miller in his Flash costume. I'm pretty sure they will make some adjustments and changes to his overall look than what we saw in the Justice League from Joss Whedon, and of course the Zack Snyder version after that. So that'll be the next footage that I suppose we're waiting for. And of course we will eventually down the line see a first shot of Michael Keaton in the Batman suit, which I think again will be based more on the Batman Returns version, and that will be the key, because as I mentioned at the start of this video, I think it's Michael Keaton's involvement that is the real selling point towards this movie overall. So again, I'm not making any judgment in the movie itself. I don't think you can at this point, because of course we don't know anything about the synopsis. We don't know who the villain is going to be. Yes, they will be taking inspiration from the Flashpoint comic book storyline, but they're not going to do that beat for beat. It's going to be a very loose adaptation where they take certain elements and then they're going to introduce more of their own ideas into the storyline as well. So we'll wait and see further on that as well. But again, I'm just giving my overall thoughts on this overall look, and yeah, it's not flattering at all. So I'm not impressed on this overall look. I just hope we can later on get down the line, get much better shots, and I'm sure when filming does wrap up and they start pushing forward the more promotional images, it will be much more of a flattering look, a much more feminine look, and I just hope they get rid of those abs, because that is not a good look at all. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on the Flashpoint movie and the first on-set pictures and the reveals. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you still enthusiastic for this movie? Do you think it's just another wasted effort from the DC? Do you wish they were carrying on with the Snyderverse, or are you happy that they're going into this multiverse initiative? Are you much a fan of Sasha Calle as an actress? Do you think she'll produce well in the role? Are you still excited to see what will happen when we see Michael Keaton in his original costume? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please also hit those like and subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.